Looking back over the years at the many different machines that I became associated with on my farm, I would have to say that this Case 1150 bulldozer was in a class all by itself. I could never have imagined that someday I would be at the controls of a crawler tractor. But all that became reality in June of 1980 when a friend of mine bought this unit at a farm auction sale in this district. His intentions were to clear bush off of some land that he had just purchased. But since he was not able to use it immediately, I asked him if he would come and do some land clearing for me instead. His valid excuse was he simply did not have the time. But we discussed the possibility that I rent the machine and do the work myself. Because I had zero knowledge on what it took to become a qualified cat skinner, I decided to consult the individual who was the previous operator of this machine for many years. I followed his very detailed instructions, and within a short time I became quite efficient at using this crawler tractor in converting wasteland into productive cropland. By mid-July of 1980, when this photo was taken, I had managed to grasp the necessary skills required for the proper handling of this crawler tractor, and naturally would each day try to add more cultivatable acres to this field. It was indeed a learning curve along the way, as both the owner of this machine as well as my mentor advised me that safety should be a prime concern each time I started the engine. Their words of caution were certainly acknowledged, but as in any workplace situation, an accident can happen in the blink of an eye. After escaping from 2 serious misadventures that could have proven fatal, I automatically took the necessary steps to make sure that a third episode would not be the end of my farming career. I was very fortunate to be able to rent this crawler, both in the summer of 1981 as well as 1982, where it was called upon once again to open up more land that could be seeded each year. After harvest was completed in early September of 1981, I took advantage of the beautiful fall weather to burn all the bush windrows from the previous year, and after they were allowed to cool, I spread these piles of ash with this dozer. When finally all of my own work was completed that year, I was granted permission by my friend to do custom work for other farmers in this district. Many hours were spent on this bulldozer, clearing bush, burying rock piles, or just basic land leveling, which of course meant working into the early part of winter when there was snow on the ground. By the summer of 1989, I had acquired more farmland that was covered with vast amounts of bush and wild prairie. I wanted some of this land cleared so it could be seeded to crop the following year. But finding anybody in the vicinity with this type of equipment is usually difficult at best. It was then that I discovered that my friend had traded off this same Case crawler to my local John Deere dealer, and since my dealer was aware of the fact that I had believed in looking after equipment, he agreed to rent it to me for as long as I needed it. Now, here in late September, I have become reacquainted with this machine that I had used so many years before, and it did not take long before the trees fell beneath its heavy blade. I will admit that the 1150 can be considered by present-day standards as a very small dozer when used in the agricultural sector, as it simply does not have the power nor the necessary weight that is required for heavy-duty farm work. These poplar trees that I am leveling are about average for what I myself would wish to tackle. Anything much larger in diameter can become a bit of a challenge for this light machine. Not to say I never confronted trees of larger size. I often did. But after 10 minutes of struggling with some of those towering brutes, It was no stretch of the imagination to say that both man and machine were completely exhausted. Having said that, this dozer is more at home working for property developers who will take advantage of its extreme maneuverability as well as its unique dozer blade that is designed for quality landscaping projects. The blade not only provides the usual hydraulic raise and lower, but hydraulics will angle the blade. They will also tilt the blade from side to side, or they can be used to pitch the blade forwards or backwards in order to leave a very level ground surface. Sadly, all of these outstanding features are of little use for this type of work as seen here. With all the trees no longer vertical, it is time to start piling them into windrows so they can be burnt at the earliest opportunity when conditions are favorable. To achieve complete combustion in any bush pile is never easy. Dig too deep into the earth to get all the roots and you end up with more dirt than trees. Leave the blade just above the surface of the ground and too much material is left that has to be cleared by hand. In today's world, all that is solved by tractors that are more than double the weight and horsepower of this little unit. They can easily dig into the earth to get every tree and root, and then push the entire slab of material before them into the pile. All physical labor is eliminated, as either very heavy-duty discs or large-scale rototillers will totally chop and pulverize the soil, so nothing remains that could ever cause a problem. As for the windrows that are left, well, they too are dealt with quickly. If there's an excessive amount of dirt left in the piles, or if there's a large amount of charred logs scattered about after an incomplete burn, then a track hoe is brought in and the entire mass is buried in giant graves. A few passes with the cultivator afterwards, and the ground is ready for the air drills in the spring. None of this technology existed when this video was made over 30 years ago, and the only option was to take the time and make the effort to do the best job possible. I knew the back-breaking chore of hand-picking any and all stumps lay before me, but there really was no alternative. I had seen in the past on too many occasions what a hard, dry log will do at harvest time to a combine table logger or a feeder house chain, and it certainly is not pretty. What made this case crawler a pleasure to operate was its simple fingertip controls. With just one hand, it was steered by independent hydraulic clutches, which allowed for full power turns, gradual turning, or total counter-rotation of both tracks. By using these small levers, I controlled within a quadrant a transmission comprised of 4 speeds forward or 4 reverse, with modulation permitting directional changes under full throttle. It may have been designed in that fashion, but I still relied solely on the foot throttle, as this made for much smoother shifting under all conditions. The combination of hand controls and foot-operated disc brakes allowed me to quite literally turn on a dime in very tight quarters. It is no exaggeration to say that thousands of acres of bushland has been carved out of this rural municipality, located here in east central Saskatchewan. What is remarkable, though, is that most of this work was achieved with equipment much smaller than what is being used here. As for my own family, speaking on behalf of my grandfather, my father, and my uncles, we have removed just under 200 acres of bush and wild prairie from this family farm. A mere drop in the bucket compared to what has taken place in the surrounding area. For the record, I have no desire to leave the viewing audience with the impression that it was my wish to destroy every single tree that stood upon my farm. On the contrary, although I believed strongly in removing bush to increase crop production, I also felt the need for leaving trees stand wherever it was feasible. It may certainly be argued, but in my opinion, I saw many advantages in leaving trees stand to act as windbreaks, snow traps, or a shelter for birds and other four-legged creatures. For what it is worth, trees and their many inhabitants have just as much right to exist on this planet as their two-legged counterparts. With its work now completed, it's time for the 1150 to go back to the dealership. And as it slowly trundles up the ramp of the flat deck, the truck driver has the honors of performing the necessary balancing act. Without a doubt, I enjoyed the many long days that I devoted to running this case crawler tractor, and was more than satisfied with the excellent work it accomplished so many years ago. It became indeed a memorable experience in my life that I shall never forget. I thank you for watching.